Hello, children, and welcome again to Sunday School. Over the last few months, we've been traveling with God's family, following the family of Jacob and his 12 sons as they were taken into Egypt because of famine and stayed there for the rest of their lives. Now, we're going to start a new story, which has a very strange name and happened hundreds of years after the family of God had moved to Egypt. The name of this new story is Exodus. Exodus means leaving, and we're going to find out how the people of God left Egypt and returned to the promised land, the land that God had promised to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob, the land of Canaan. Joseph and his brothers lived in Egypt all the rest of their lives. After some time, Joseph's two boys were married. They had children, and Joseph had the pleasure of playing with his own grandchildren, for he lived to be an old man. Before he died, Joseph said to the children of Israel, "I'm going to die, but God will surely bring you out of this land to the land of Canaan again. When you go, I want you to carry my bones with you and to bury them in the land of Canaan." And he made them promise that they would do this. Joseph was 110 years old when he died, and they embalmed his body and put it in a coffin in Egypt. The children of Israel were now settled in the land of Egypt. They lived there for many, many years. Joseph and all his brothers died. Another generation grew up and died, and another, and another. The king who knew Joseph also died, and he was followed by another Pharaoh, and he by another. God gave many children to the Israelites, so that as the years passed, they became a mighty nation. The land of Egypt held two different families of people, the Israelites and the Egyptians. After 400 years in the land of Egypt, the Israelites had grown to be a nation of 3 million people. They had almost forgotten that they had ever lived in another land, but not quite. The mothers still told their children stories of the boy Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his cruel brothers, and of his wonderful rise to power, till he was next in power to Pharaoh himself. The fathers still told their sons about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, how God himself had often spoken to them. They still told their sons that Egypt was not their true country, but that God had long ago promised to give the land of Canaan to them. As one Pharaoh after another reigned, the Egyptians forgot at last who Joseph was and what he had done for the people of Egypt in the time of the terrible famine. There arose a Pharaoh who knew nothing about Egypt. This new king saw the mighty nation of the Israelites living in the land of Egypt, right among the Egyptians. He did not like it. These people, though they were not Egyptians, lived on some of the best land in Egypt. And he said to the people, "Look, the people of the children of Israel are more than we are. If there should be a war, they might join our enemies and fight against us." So he made the children of Israel work very hard. Pharaoh was building 2 cities, and he made the Israelites work on these cities as slaves. He set taskmasters over the Israelites with long whips in their hands. If they saw a man who was not working hard enough, they brought the cruel whip down on his back. The Israelites were made to do all sorts of hard work. But the more the Egyptians afflicted them, the more the Israelites grew. When Pharaoh saw this, he thought of a still harsher way to prevent them becoming stronger. He commanded that whenever a little baby boy was born in an Israelite home, the people must throw him in the river. The little girl babies might live, because they could not grow up to be soldiers who might fight against the Egyptians. Now, in these evil days, a beautiful baby boy was born to a father and mother among the Israelites. He was a very fine baby, strong and well. His mother made up her mind to hide him, for she knew the Egyptian soldiers would come and throw him into the Nile River. So she told no one that she had a new baby. She hid him where none of the neighbors would see him when they came to call. The minute he began to cry, she hushed him up very quickly. But when he was 3 months old, she could not hide him any longer, for he cried so loudly that people could hear him even when they were outside the house. She made a little boat of reeds, which she covered on the outside with tar to stop up the cracks and to keep the water out. She lined it with a soft cloth and put baby in it. She carried the basket boat down to the riverside and laid it gently in the reeds of bulrushes that grew near the river bank. Then the mother went away, for she did not dare to stay there. She feared that someone would see her and suspect that she had a baby hidden there. The baby had a sister named Miriam, who was about 12 years old. The mother told Miriam to go down to the river and stand at a little distance, hiding, to see what would happen to the baby. Pharaoh's daughter used to go down to the river to bathe. She went to the river on that same day. While the princess was bathing, she saw the little basket among the bulrushes. She had her maid bring it to her. When she had opened it, she saw the beautiful baby, who began to cry. Pharaoh's daughter knew at once that it was one of the Hebrew babies. She thought what a shame it would be to drown such a beautiful child. All her maids clustered round and looked at the baby. When he began to cry, they lifted him up out of the basket, cuddled him in their arms, and tried to soothe him. The princess took him in her arms. The baby soon stopped crying and smiled up into her face. When she saw that, she loved him and determined to keep him for her own son. All this time, Miriam had been watching from the bulrushes. When she saw the princess take the baby in her arms and pet him, she ran out and asked the princess, "Shall I go and call one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," answered the princess. Little Miriam ran home very quickly. How happy the mother was! Her baby was safe. She hurried to the princess, who said to her, "I found this child in the bulrushes and am going to adopt him. Will you take him home and nurse him for me? I will pay you for it." So the mother carried home her own baby and took care of him for Pharaoh's daughter. The princess had lovely clothes made for him, and every week his mother took him to Pharaoh's palace so that the princess might see him. And the princess gave him beautiful gold and silver toys and everything that a little prince might like to have. Although he was often taken to the palace, he lived with his mother until he was 5 or 6 years old, playing with his brother Aaron, who was 3 years older than him, and with Miriam. At last he went to live with the princess at the palace. She hired the finest teachers in the land to teach him all the wisdom and learning of the Egyptians. Since he was a prince, he must be a wise man. She named him Moses, which means drawn out, for she had drawn him out of the water. Moses lived with the princess until he was 40 years old. Before he went to live at Pharaoh's palace, his mother had very carefully taught him about the true God, for the Egyptians worshipped idols. She also had taught him about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. She said, "You must remember that even though you are brought up to be the son of Pharaoh's daughter, you're really an Israelite and not an Egyptian." It was a very good thing that Moses was taught all the learning of the Egyptians. God had a great work for Moses to do when he was a man, which he could not do if he were not wise. God was already planning Moses' life and the Exodus from Egypt.